Morning, tweeting no surprise about his decision to scrap subsidies that help pay health care for low-income Americans. The president tweeting, quote, "Very proud of my executive order, which will allow greatly expanded access and far lower costs for health care. Millions of people benefit!" Exclamation point. I have a feeling some people will disagree with that. 18 states and the city of Washington, D.C. disagree and are participating in a lawsuit aimed at blocking the cuts. Reaction to the cuts have been divided mostly along party lines. Let's hear from Republican Congresswoman Diane Black and former Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Obama, Kathleen Sebelius, on Meet the Press Daily yesterday.
Even though you subsidize premiums, the premiums may be low, so someone can afford that. But when you have a deductible that is so high that they can't afford to use their card, then that really doesn't help. And so these CSRs, if they were working, if they were really doing what we needed them to do, we probably wouldn't be having that much of this conversation right now.
Repealing the help that individuals get from the federal government to pay those subsidies seems to me to be totally contrary to her belief. We might need more help. Do more people need help paying out-of-pocket costs? You bet.
For more on this, I am joined now by former Vermont Governor Howard Dean and former New York Republican Congresswoman Dr. Nan Hayworth. Doctors both, I should say. Dr. Hayworth, I want to start with you. The CBO says this action is going to cause premiums to spike. The deficit's going to balloon. How exactly is this going to be better for Americans?
Well, I think, Jacob, we have to go back to the fundamental issue that, unfortunately, the Affordable Care Act has been bad for Americans. And, in fact, the CBO does predict that by 2020, premiums will fall based on a greater variety of products entering the market. But really, instead of being called cost-sharing reductions, these should actually be called profit-boosting subsidies for insurers, because that's what they are. The fundamental mechanism of the Affordable Care Act is to confer taxpayer and consumer dollars on the insurance industry. That's why they supported it. The law lards on a whole list of mandates that the insurers have to charge lots and lots of money to cover. That's their cover, so to speak, for raising premiums, raising deductibles, reducing access, because they leave markets where even with all of that support, they still find that they can't make sufficient profit. But this action by the president is another move toward sensibly approaching this issue. And Congress does need to act, Jacob. Congress does need to pass repeal and replacement that actually will make full sense for the American people. But those subsidies, those profit-boosting subsidies, actually were found to be unconstitutional by a federal appeals court judge in the District of Columbia in 2016. The president is acting in accordance with his responsibilities and with the law.
Dr. Hayworth, if I could just real quick follow up on that, though. If the goal, I understand the goal is to ultimately fix Obamacare, make it work better.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, ordinary Americans are going to suffer, according to the CBO. Shouldn't Congress just reinstate these CSRs until they can work out a fix to Obamacare?
Jacob, Americans are suffering now. The families across the country are finding, those in the individual markets are finding that the insurance products that are being offered to them are costing ever more, even with the taxpayer dollars that we've been pumping into these insurers. Even with that, insurers demand ever more. If you want to read a great piece about it that's very moving, read Michelle Malkin today. She has talked about how her family of four who buy in the individual market have lost 4 different insurance plans over the past 4 years, and their costs keep skyrocketing. Thousands and thousands of dollars a year going just to health insurance, going to the insurers. It doesn't make sense. We can do much better.
Governor Dean, I got to get your reaction here.
Well, I think that's mostly hocus pocus. The insurance function was actually originally designed by Mitt Romney when they did this in Massachusetts. Obamacare and Romneycare are quite similar, actually. So, you know, the problem is all this kind of stuff usually blows up in the president's face because he has no idea what he's doing. What he's going to do is take health insurance away from 1 million Americans. Those million Americans are going to be spread in a lot of states that he's going to be awfully sorry about in 2018. This has nothing to do with profits for an insurance company. This has to do with making insurance affordable for people who can't afford it. And what the result of this has already been is that in 3 markets, insurance companies have got an additional rate increases, which means everybody has to pay in order for them to continue to supply insurance. This is just stupidity. It's based on petulance. Donald Trump no more knows about anything about the insurance company than the man on the moon. This is silly. This is typical Trump. He gets upset about something. He reacts. This is not going to fix the problems that Obamacare has. The good news is this isn't going to undermine the core of Obamacare. The core of Obamacare was, one, getting rid of pre-existing conditions, which will suffer for those people who get private insurance because of this, what he did the other day, if it holds up in court, which I think it won't. But the core of Obamacare is the Medicaid expansion, and that is going to continue for those states that have a governor and a legislature with the brains to figure out how to bring federal money into their states and help balance their budget, like not just Democrats, but John Kasich, who forced his legislature to take Medicaid money. That's the core of the expansion. The core of the expansion is going to continue for most people, but a lot of Americans, modest income Americans who presumably voted for Trump, are going to suffer because of this, because it's petulant, it has nothing to do with the facts, and it was motivated by anger. And that's always a bad way to do public policy.
Governor, let me ask you, as the former head of the DNC, the president seems to think this is going to force Democrats to make some kind of deal on health care. He tweeted for the Democrats. He said, quote unquote, call me. Is that going to work?
No, because the president's word is no good. Nobody believes the president's going to make a deal. Look, he made a deal on DACA already, and he's already taken that offer back. Making a deal with Donald Trump is making a deal with somebody who doesn't keep their word. He didn't keep his word in business, and he's not going to keep it now. So, I don't believe that he can make a deal with anybody. This is not the real estate business in New York City. This is serious. This is 310 million people's welfare that he's responsible for. He's been in office for almost 9 months, and he doesn't seem to grasp that yet.
Dr. Hayworth, scrapping these subsidies are likely going to cause more instability, as we talked about. As the CBO said, Trump, in fact, tweeted and pointed out himself that health insurance stocks took a dive. He was proud of that. How good is this for insurance markets, anybody, frankly?
Well, Jacob, number one, because of that court decision to which I referred earlier, that appeals court decision, most insurers actually had anticipated and also probably, yes, because of what happened in the election last year. Most insurers have anticipated for 2017 and 2018 that they will not be getting these CSRs or, again, profit-boosting subsidies. So they've already allowed for that. And that means that there is a window for Congress to act, and they should act. And the Senate is especially responsible for this. We need to be able to craft a bill that will provide, just as you've said, we do need relief for the American people. They are suffering under the consequences of a very ill-conceived law. And when Governor Dean talks about folks not knowing what they're doing, well, my God, put American health care in the hands of federal legislators, because most of them do not have any idea what they're doing. And it's one thing if a state wants to do that. It's one thing if Massachusetts wants to do it. It's an entirely different thing for the federal government to interfere in our health care. Congress does need to act.
Well, it is 1 month away, or less than a month away, from open enrollment. You are right that the insurance premiums have been set for 2018, but the CBO had predicted they'll go up 20% if President Trump took this action. So you are right. There's a window to act, and then a lot of pain for a lot of people. Governor Howard Dean, Nan Hayworth, thank you both very much for joining me. Good to see you.
Thank you.